Fired at 53. Broke. Desperate enough to sell my plasma for $60. I never imagined that something so small, so ordinary, would one day save millions of lives. But that's exactly what happened, and it all started on a rainy Tuesday morning when everything seemed lost. It was a Thursday when my world fell apart. After more than 30 years of working at the same company in Ohio, I walked out with a cardboard box filled with memories, framed photos, and an old coffee mug. My name had been called over the loudspeaker one last time. "We regret to inform you." I had always thought loyalty meant something. I had dedicated decades, stayed late, trained new employees, done everything I could to keep the business running. Yet, in a matter of minutes, it was gone. No warning, no negotiation, just a pink slip and the bitter taste of betrayal. At 53, being fired felt like a punch to the chest, not just because I had lost my job, but because I had built my life around it. The mortgage, bills, groceries, even small joys, everything depended on that steady paycheck. Suddenly, all of it disappeared. The first week was the hardest. I sat at the kitchen table staring at past due notices, my wife hovering beside me with worried eyes. She tried to hide her fear, but I could see it. My kids didn't know how to help. My friends didn't know what to say. The world felt silent except for the constant ringing of my own panic. With no savings left, I had to make a choice. Something, anything, to keep food on the table. That's when I remembered the plasma donation center I had passed hundreds of times on my way to work. They paid in cash, $50, $60 per visit. I had laughed at the idea back then. Now it was a lifeline. The first day was strange. Lying in that recliner, needles in my arm, monitors beeping, it felt clinical and cold. I handed over my ID, signed the forms, and waited. The technician's voice was calm. "This won't take long. You'll be out with $60. I laughed bitterly to myself. $60. Enough for a few meals, maybe a tank of gas. But compared to the years of work I had lost, it felt humiliating. Yet, as the plasma flowed from my veins into the collection bag, I began to notice something strange. The staff kept glancing at me, exchanging whispers I couldn't quite hear. Then one of the nurses approached. "You have a rare blood type," she said. "We may need to run some additional tests." My heart skipped a beat. Rare? I hadn't thought much about it. I'd always been healthy, but ordinary. Now something as simple as my blood might be different. I left that first visit exhausted, but with $60 clutched in my hand. Yet even as I walked to my car, a flicker of hope sparked. Maybe this small, desperate step could lead to something bigger, something I couldn't yet imagine. Little did I know, the next few weeks would change my life in ways I had never dreamed, and that plasma, my blood, would become the key to saving millions of lives. The days after that first plasma donation were a blur of exhaustion and worry. I kept going back, not because it felt good, because it didn't, but because it was the only way to put food on the table. Each visit brought the same routine. Sit in the recliner, fill out the forms, let the nurse insert the needle, and wait. $60 each time. Humiliating, yes, but necessary. Then came the call that would change everything. "Mr. Collins," said a voice on the other end, professional but urgent. "This is Dr. Hayes from the Plasma Center. We've run some tests on your blood, and we need you to come in immediately." My hands trembled. Tests? I hadn't agreed to anything beyond the donation. What could be so urgent? When I arrived, Dr. Hayes greeted me with a seriousness I had never seen in her before. "Sit down," she said, motioning to a chair in the small office. Your plasma, it's remarkable. In fact, it may be historic." I blinked. Historic? I don't understand. She leaned forward. "Your plasma contains antibodies that are extraordinarily rare. They can potentially neutralize some of the deadliest diseases we've been studying. Your blood, it could save millions of lives." My stomach dropped. Millions? That sounded impossible. I had been broke, desperate, and humiliated just days ago. And now someone was telling me my blood, my own plasma, might be worth far more than I had ever imagined. Dr. Hayes explained that researchers had been trying for years to find plasma donors with this rare combination of antibodies. Most attempts had failed, but mine had shown results in the first round of testing that were better than anyone had ever recorded. "Mr. Collins, we'd like you to work with our team. There's a program to produce a treatment, but it will require regular plasma donations and careful monitoring. This could be life-changing for you." Life-changing. The words echoed in my mind. I thought about my empty fridge, the bills piling up, the pink slip I still hadn't fully processed. Could this really be the solution? Or was it just another twist of cruel irony? I left the office feeling lightheaded and overwhelmed. The world outside looked the same. Cars rushing by, people walking dogs, kids laughing. But nothing felt ordinary anymore. My blood, something I had taken for granted, had become more valuable than my entire career, my home, even my past. Over the next few weeks, I returned to the plasma center every other day. Each visit was scrutinized, monitored, and analyzed. Scientists asked questions about my medical history, my lifestyle, my diet, everything that might explain this rare miracle inside my veins. I was honest, of course. I had nothing to hide. But every time they ran the tests, the results astonished them. And then came the moment that changed everything completely. One morning, Dr. Hayes called me in again. Her face was tense, but her eyes held something I couldn't quite read. "Mr. Collins," she said softly, "we've started the preliminary trials using your plasma, and the results, they're incredible. You might not realize it, but you've already begun saving lives." I swallowed hard. My plasma, the thing I had considered a desperate last resort, was suddenly a lifeline for thousands, maybe millions. And yet the weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders. Little did I know, the challenges were just beginning. The media, the attention, the pressure from pharmaceutical companies, all of it would come next. And the decision I made now could change the course of my life forever. After the breakthrough with my plasma, life changed in ways I could never have imagined. The calls started first. Emails from research labs, messages from hospitals, even inquiries from pharmaceutical companies. Everyone wanted a piece of the miracle in my blood. At first, I tried to ignore it. I had been broke, desperate, and exhausted. Now I was suddenly in a whirlwind of attention I didn't know how to handle. Dr. Hayes kept reassuring me, but even she seemed a little tense. "We need to move carefully. Your plasma is rare, but it's also precious. People will try to exploit that." Exploit it? I didn't fully understand what she meant until a week later. I woke to a barrage of phone calls and a news article titled, "Local Man's Blood Could Save Millions and Make Billions." My face was all over the internet. Interviews were scheduled. Media vans appeared outside my small apartment. My privacy, once taken for granted, was gone. It felt surreal. I was 53, broke, and suddenly thrust into a world of cameras, microphones, and scientific jargon I could barely follow. People treated me like a hero, but the pressure was enormous. Every decision mattered. Every word I spoke could influence the success of research and the lives of thousands or millions who might need the treatment. Even worse, the money talks began. Pharmaceutical companies hinted at contracts, huge sums for exclusive rights, and perks I had never imagined. But Dr. Hayes warned me repeatedly, "This isn't just about money. Think about the people who need this treatment. Think about the consequences if you make the wrong choice. Still, I couldn't ignore the reality I was facing. My bills were overdue, my mortgage was late, my car needed repairs. Selling plasma had started as a desperate act for $60, but now every donation could secure not just my survival, but the opportunity to help countless others. The next donation day was different. Scientists ran multiple tests, drawing vials after vials of blood. I was hooked up to machines, monitored like never before, while doctors whispered excitedly over their instruments. They explained that my plasma was producing antibodies that could fight diseases that had baffled medical experts for decades, and they were watching the results in real time. It was exhilarating, but also terrifying. I realized how fragile this balance was. One mistake, one misstep, and the entire process could fail. And if it did, the pressure wouldn't just affect me, it would affect the people counting on this treatment to survive. The tipping point came when a reporter confronted me outside the donation center. "Are you going to profit from this? Millions could die if you say no." I froze. The words hit me like a punch. I hadn't thought about profit. I had only thought about survival, about paying my bills, about doing something meaningful for once. And yet the ethical weight of the decision pressed down on me like never before. That night, lying in bed, I realized my life had been split into two. The man who had once sold plasma for $60, desperate and invisible, and the man whose blood now carried the potential to save millions. And the world was watching, waiting, and expecting a choice that could define me forever. The next step would demand courage, wisdom, and sacrifice, and I knew, deep down, there was no turning back. The days after the media attention became unbearable. Every trip to the plasma center felt like walking into a storm. Cameras flashed outside the doors. Reporters tried to corner me in the parking lot. Friends and distant relatives reached out with advice, demands, and even threats. My life had become a constant juggling act between desperation, responsibility, and fear. Dr. Hayes called me in one morning with a serious expression. "We need to discuss the next stage. The research team wants to scale up. Your plasma is invaluable, but the process will be taxing, and the schedule will be strict. We can't afford delays." I swallowed hard. I had already given plasma multiple times each week, leaving me drained and dizzy more often than I cared to admit. Yet I also understood the stakes. Millions of lives might depend on this. The idea of saying no felt impossible, yet the thought of overextending myself was terrifying. Then came the unexpected offer from a pharmaceutical company. They wanted exclusive rights to my plasma, promising a contract worth millions. "You'll be secure for life," one executive said. "You'll never have to worry about money again." I was stunned, a lifetime of financial worry suddenly evaporating in front of me. But Dr. Hayes' warning rang in my ears. It's not just about money. Think about the people who need this treatment. Think about the consequences if you make the wrong choice. That night, I sat alone in my small apartment, staring at the envelope with my latest plasma test results. My hands shook. Could I sell this miracle for wealth? Or should I dedicate myself fully to helping as many people as possible, even if it meant exhaustion, stress, and risk? I thought about the people I had seen in hospital beds during my childhood, family members, neighbors, friends, fighting illnesses that had no cure. I thought about my own desperation just weeks ago, selling plasma for $60 because I had no other option. The stakes felt personal now, a responsibility I could never ignore. The next donation day brought another layer of complexity. Dr. Hayes explained that the research team had identified a disease that could be treated using my plasma. The trial patients were in critical condition, waiting for the next batch. Each vial I donated could literally be the difference between life and death. As I lay in the recliner, the needle in my arm, monitors beeping, I felt every drop as both a blessing and a burden. The staff whispered updates to each other, and I could hear the excitement in their voices. They were counting on me, and I was counting on myself to make the right choices. By midweek, the pressure became almost unbearable. Requests kept coming from media outlets, researchers, and companies. My schedule left no room to rest, to think, or even to eat properly. Fatigue pressed on me like a physical weight, but the thought of people's lives depending on me made quitting impossible. Late that night, I looked at myself in the mirror. The man staring back was no longer the same one who had sold plasma for $60. This was someone who held the potential to save millions, someone whose decisions carried enormous consequences. And I realized that whatever choice I made next, whether about contracts, ethics, or personal limits, would define the rest of my life. I had crossed a line I never thought I would reach. There was no turning back now. The following morning, I woke with a mix of exhaustion and determination. The past few weeks had pushed me to my limits, physically, emotionally, and mentally. But now the moment of decision had arrived. I had to choose not just how I would move forward, but what kind of person I wanted to be. Dr. Hayes met me at the plasma center. Her expression was calm, but there was urgency in her eyes. "The team is ready," she said. "They've identified patients in critical condition. Your plasma could be their only hope, but you have to commit fully." I nodded, feeling the weight of every choice I had made and every consequence still to come. My mind flashed back to my life just a month ago. Fired, broke, unsure how I would make it through another week. Selling plasma for $60 had seemed like the lowest point. Now the same act held the power to save countless lives. I lay back in the recliner, the needle placed carefully in my arm. Machines hummed quietly, monitoring every drop. I closed my eyes and pictured the people who might receive my plasma. Faces of strangers, yes, but faces that could smile again, breathe easier, or simply live another day because of me. For hours, I donated plasma, each vial a small but significant contribution. Scientists whispered their amazement at the results. Nurses exchanged glances of quiet awe, and I felt an indescribable mix of pride, fear, and responsibility. Every drop was more than just blood. It was a chance at life, a lifeline to someone who might have had none. And then came the call that would cement the reality of my impact. Dr. Hayes' voice was steady but full of emotion. "Mr. Collins, the patients in the first trials are responding beyond expectations. Your plasma, it's saving lives. Millions could benefit if we continue at this pace." I could barely comprehend the words. Millions, lives, saved. The thought overwhelmed me. I had gone from a man on the edge of despair to someone whose very existence could touch countless others. It was humbling, terrifying, and beautiful all at once. But even as the gratitude and recognition flowed in, I knew the personal cost. My body was strained, my schedule relentless, my privacy gone. Yet the choice was clear. I could chase wealth and comfort, or I could dedicate myself to this mission that now defined me. My decision wasn't easy, but it wasn't hard either. Weeks turned to months. My plasma donations continued, the research expanded, and the treatment reached more and more patients. I received letters, messages, and even video calls from people whose lives had been changed. Their gratitude was overwhelming, a reminder of why every drop, every sacrifice mattered. And in those quiet moments, I thought back to that rainy Tuesday morning when I was fired and broke. Selling plasma for $60 had seemed like the lowest point, but now the same act held the power to save countless lives. I realized that sometimes the lowest points in life can lead to the most profound opportunities. And sometimes the smallest acts, one plasma donation, one brave choice, can change not just your life, but the lives of millions. The road wasn't easy, the pressure was immense. But as I looked at the faces of those who had been saved, I knew the answer had been worth every sacrifice. And in that moment, I understood something I would carry forever. Even when life seems broken, even when the future feels hopeless, One choice, one act of courage can make all the difference.